5D Ascension is a shift in frequency. Today we're going to be talking about specific ways that you can change your frequency. As always, question your reality and then change it. Welcome to the ThunderWizard.com YouTube channel. ThunderWizard.com is the website that supports this YouTube channel. At that website, I teach you higher dimensional energy practices. There's personal mentorship, which is available, spiritual counseling, and live Zoom group classes. Of course, YouTube here is at ThunderWizard. My books can be found at michaelwilliamdenny.com. Please check them all out, and please support the channel through the websites. Thank you. All right. 5D frequency being a 5D ascension, rather being a frequency shift. How can you change your frequency? So this is a video that I'm making today. I just made one a few minutes ago, which I uploaded to my other platform, Rumble. So go check that out because that's got some very important information. Listen to the warning I give you in the beginning of that video to make sure that it's right for you. If it's not, don't watch it. Anyway, but what's really important to know is that our shift that we're currently experiencing is about frequency. So knowing that is very important, and knowing what you can do to shift your frequency, shift your awareness, to take control, take ownership of your awareness, take control and ownership of your frequency and your frequency shift is very important. The worst thing that can happen is what is happening with a lot of people who are just not aware of what's going on with them. They're not self-aware, and they're not aware of what's happening to them. And so they're just knee-jerk responding out of their fear-based self-protection mechanisms, which is going to keep you in a lower frequency. So this isn't about avoiding your feelings. This is about taking action and responsibility and having self-awareness, sometimes in spite of your feelings. So specifically, we'll talk about some specific ways to do that. But generally speaking, let's just talk about this. So I would love to, at some point, launch into different dimensions, because that is so incredibly interesting. But it is my belief that higher dimensions are really higher octaves of frequency. So, you know, within a certain octave, you could have different musical tones, different frequencies. Forgive me if I'm destroying this this metaphor, because I'm not trained in music theory. Although I'm a trained percussionist, I don't know anything about music theory. So I'm going off of that. So, you know, within a certain octave of music, there's different notes, different frequencies. I think that's accurate to say. And then you can go up different octaves, which are chunks of the same, right? Same note, but higher octaves of that. And I believe that's what, I honestly don't know, but I'm guessing that's what higher dimensions are. Now, why higher dimensions are such an interesting and hard topic to talk about is because we don't understand them. And please, again, as always, my strong suggestion is please do not listen to the majority of stuff out there. People who don't know what they're talking about when they use the word dimension, when they use the word density, and those people throw around the word 5D, 6D, 7D, and they don't have any idea what they're saying. What they really mean when they say 5D, the vast majority, almost 100% of every single person on YouTube or anywhere else that talks about 5D, they are talking about a higher frequency within the third dimension. They'll tell you, no, I'm talking about a different dimension. They're not. Because unless you understand dimensions from a perspective of physics, then it's virtually impossible that you even begin to think in terms of higher dimensions. So if you really want to have your mind blown, go watch videos about what is reality like in higher dimensions, the higher dimensions explained from physics. Again, the third dimension is, and the word dimension has to do with physical spatial properties. That's why it's important. The third dimension is different from the fourth dimension because the fourth dimension has different spatial properties. The third dimension has 3 dimensions because you live in a box. The box is you have length, forward and backward, width, left and right, and you have height, up and down. Those are 3 dimensions. Each one is at a right angle to the rest of them. Right? So those are 3 dimensions. 4 dimensions means that you have double the spatial reference points. Again, in 3 dimensions, you have 8 spatial reference points. You have a box above you that has 4 points, and then you draw a line straight down from those 4 points to 4 points, the square that you're standing on. You now have 8 reference points, right? That's the third dimension. It's a box. So the fourth dimension has 16 reference points. We can't really come up with that. All of the tesseract, I don't know, do I have a tesseract here? All the tesseracts that you've seen, which people try to use to explain the fourth dimension, they don't work because if you can draw a tesseract, it'll be a 2-dimensional representation of a 4-dimensional space. We can make a 2-dimensional representation of a 3rd-dimensional space, and it can work because our brain can take that 2-dimensional 3rd-dimensional shadow, or that 2-dimensional shadow of the 3rd dimension, and create 3 dimensions out of it. But we don't have the ability to take the shadow, the 2-dimensional shadow of the 4th-dimensional tesseract, and reconstruct that into 4 dimensions. We can't. We don't have the ability. Our brain doesn't have the ability to do it. I don't care who. It doesn't matter who they are. You can't do it. I'm not finding a tesseract here. But what I was going to show you is that those tesseracts, you can go Google it, tesseract. What you'll see is a weird looking box. If you see a GIF or a movie of it, it looks like this weird morphing box, and that's not what it is. Again, we can't experience it. But even if you have a 3rd-dimensional model of a tesseract, it looks like a box with a tiny box inside of it, connected to it. Even that physical representation is a 3rd-dimensional shadow of the 4th dimension. So, point is, you cannot comprehend even 4 dimensions. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know what it's like to move around in it. But what I can say is that it's the shift up not only is a physical dimensional shift from 8 reference points to 16, but it's also a huge, unbelievable shift in energy and emotions. Now, since we're talking about frequency, this is how I know people who talk about things, especially people who claim to be channelers or people who claim to communicate with ETs or whomever. I can tell if they've actually interacted with higher dimensions on a regular basis, on a deep basis, because if you have, you immediately know that 4th dimension and higher, it's impossible to be abusive, selfish, predatory. So this is how I know. Anybody who talks about transdimensional beings being evil, I already know they haven't been outside of the 3rd dimension. They haven't experienced it. They haven't felt it. So it's important that when we talk about that, as I'm laying the groundwork here, I want you to know how big of a difference it is. And I just got hit with higher dimensional energy as I said that. How incredibly huge of a difference it is to go from a different frequency in the third dimension than it is to go to a different dimension altogether. I haven't experienced this because when I do higher dimensional meditation, I'm not really all that visual. My brain can sometimes create some visuals, but for the most part, it's not really all that visual. I can feel the energy, and I can, by braille, make my way through it that way, which works just fine for me. But some people are more visual than I am, and they've interacted with beings who I believe are in higher dimensions, and when they're like looking at their head is either a big ball of light or they can't figure it out. And the beings, when the person is trying to look at, why can't I make anything out their head? There aren't any details. The being will say, don't try. You wouldn't be able to understand or process what's going on with my head. Now that makes sense if that being is in a higher dimension, because that means that, again, just to give you an example, somebody, again, I appreciate it, but somebody, I made a statement in a previous video where I said that it's impossible to see anything if you're a second dimensional being. The reason for that is because you have to have height to see anything. And whenever somebody talks about it in videos, what it would be like to see from a two-dimensional perspective, they say things would look like a point or a line. But a point and a line all have height, even if it's minuscule. But the fact of the matter is two-dimension doesn't have height. It only has length and width. So there's nothing to see. It's impossible to see. And we're also projecting, because here's where it gets crazy. I've said this before. In the third dimension, we have a two-dimensional eyeball, meaning my eyeball is a third-dimensional sphere, eyeball, but the retina, the back of my eyeball, is a two-dimensional screen. Light hits it, and it projects onto this two-dimensional screen. I have a television screen in my head. You do as well. That's why when you watch a two-dimensional television screen and you look away at your three-dimensional reality, it looks exactly the same to you. You know that if you go up and touch the screen, there's no depth to it, but when you sit and look at it, you see depth. That's because you have a two-dimensional video screen in the back of your eyeballs. So we're taking this two-dimensional thing and we're projecting it on what a two-dimensional being would see. But a two-dimensional being, if they had eyeballs, they would have a one-dimensional eyeball, which is nonsense. One dimension, there's nothing to see. There's only one dimension. Anyway, you can't see anything unless there's height. So if this is true, then it would also mean that in 4 dimensions, you would have a third dimensional retina, which means that your screen that the light hits would be 3-dimensional, which means light would be hitting you from the bottom, from the top, from the side, and from the front. That also means that there's that whole extra dimension of physical space, which means I wouldn't just have, my head wouldn't be round like this, my head would be round, and then there would be some other direction and dimension that I can't imagine, because I would be a physical being in the 4th dimension. Does that make sense? But you're walking around in the 4th dimension, but you need a 3-dimensional eyeball to experience all of the dimensions and see it. But you would be seeing, again, only a 3rd-dimensional representation of a 4th-dimensional world. We see a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional world. I'm only saying that to let you know how absolutely crazy and different it would be to get to a higher dimension. I don't know if that's what's coming. That may be what's coming. But I don't know. At the very least, we should be prepared for a shift to a higher frequency perhaps within the third dimension. Now, I think this is already going on. So if we follow the physics of it, light has different frequencies, different colors. When you put light through a prism, it creates different colors, which are different frequencies of light. So just like we can't visually see certain colors because the frequency is, we don't have the ability to detect those. Those colors are still there. We just can't see them. I believe that it's possible that there are different versions of Earth that we can't see or perceive because they're at a higher frequency. And so it is my belief that we may shift to a higher frequency Earth. I know Sasquatch, for example, is a multi-frequency. Well, just to give you an example, perhaps they're a third dimensional being, but they have the ability to shift into higher realm of frequencies in the third dimension. Now, the voice of Sasquatches that have been recorded, when they've been analyzed, the sounds that are coming out of them are simultaneously higher and lower than any other animal, including humans. We can't do it. So just the noise that we can hear that can be recorded that comes from them is already a multi-frequency sound. I know I've heard a Sasquatch. One screamed at me. I talked about it in one of my earlier videos. Screamed at me 3 times, and it was so otherworldly. It was, anyway, and I've got a whole video about it. And I know that Sasquatches are known to literally just disappear, and their footprints in giant fields of snow there will just be footprints that disappear in the middle of a mile-wide snowfield. There's no way they could have jumped out of it. Either somebody airlifted them out, or they shifted to another dimension, or at the very least another frequency of this dimension. So I'm putting all that out there so you can give yourself an option to think differently about everything. Now, here's what's interesting about that. It means that we can't access even higher frequencies in the third dimension if our frequency is stuck in a certain place. So it's really helpful to understand that in this frequency of the third dimension, you're able to have self-pity, anger, fear, doubt. All of those frequencies are able to be manifested. They're like certain colors. They're emotional, they're emotions, but they're colors, right? So imagine that there's a frequency above that where in order to experience that frequency, we have to have corresponding emotional frequencies. So the emotional frequencies, as you get higher and higher, go into bliss, love, joy, empathy, compassion, kindness. I made a video yesterday about I was working with and communicating to a higher dimensional being who represented herself as the goddess Tiamat. And for the whole day, I was in a whole other realm. Now, physically, I was still in this realm as far as I could tell, but I was driving to the gym, and I live in the place where I'm living at the moment. Unfortunately, I might have to move to another place temporarily for a few months, which is a bummer. But in the city that I live in right now is just huge amounts of unbelievable rainforest here. It's hard to believe in the United States, I'm in Florida, that there's this crazy amount of beautiful rainforest, tropical looking rainforest. And so as I'm driving through this forest and then the clouds in the sky, everything was just took on a whole different vibe, and I could see all of the trees, and I could see this goddess and all of creation, and I could feel her love, her maternal love for the whole world coming out of the plants and the clouds. I mean, obviously there was a lot of DMT that was going through my brain naturally as a result of this interaction. But, I was vibrating on a higher frequency because it was very hard to have any negative feelings like self-pity or anger or, doubt or fear or any of that stuff that is normally part of this dimension. I wasn't, it just wasn't part of where I was at. I was just so full of love and compassion. I mean, you saw, I could barely keep from crying as I talked about a little 3-year-old girl who was weeping. I mean, I could handle that today because I'm not in that frequency. But in the frequency that I was experiencing with her, I couldn't even tolerate seeing a 3-year-old girl crying. It was too much for me to handle. So you understand that higher frequencies mean not only more love, but less of the negative things. So you can't bring any fear-based vibes into any of this. That's okay if you feel it, but you can't adopt it. You've got to be willing to become self-aware. So the tools on this channel that are the most powerful, researching scientific simulation evidence theory, Donald Hoffman on YouTube. Become aware of your attachments to the 3D narrative. Make a committed, disciplined decision to choose to exit this simulation. And here's the one I want to tell you right now. Practice the 12 steps to 5D to become self-aware. It's very important. There's no shortage of people out there talking about love and light who are completely unaware of their anger and their fear, and they conflate the two. There's going to be no shortage of people in the lower 2D realm who talk about escaping the matrix and I've got nothing but love in my heart, and will be filled with unconscious rage and all of that. So you have to become self-aware. Doesn't mean that you have to get rid of your negative feelings, but you need to be aware of it. So the 12 steps to 5D, which you can find on this channel, go and click on that playlist. That will help you. So I recommend that you do that so you can become aware and work through it. You've got to work through your resentments. You have to. Your resentments are attachments. So if you can't say, I've forgotten, but I won't. I've forgiven, but I haven't forgotten. You can't say that. If you say that, then it means you're still angry. So if you're still self-righteously holding on to knowing, what they did to you and how they owe you that, you're still in anger mode. You got to let go of it. So the 4th through the 7th step is where that comes about. Listen, it's just, this is what I know has to be done, and these are the tools that I have. So, do something. If you don't know, what's the worst thing that can happen if you follow my suggestions? The worst thing that can happen is your life will get better. It's the worst thing. The best thing is you might shift up to a higher frequency. Worst case scenario, you're going to be happier in this one. But if you don't do anything, you're guaranteed to be where you are and perhaps get worse. So I give you and I'm telling you from 61 years of living and from observing, the people whose lives get better are the people who take action. It's not about trying to change the way you think. This is what happens with people who smoke pot all day. People who smoke pot all day who are being physically, their emotions are being physically manipulated by a drug, which is really just dumbing them down and numbing them out. But they think they're having a deeper spiritual experience. This kind of passive letting something happen to you, it's the opposite. You've got to learn to be tolerant of all of your feelings, positive and negative, and take actions. Actions are what does it. So this is why I teach you, that's why I'm constantly telling you to go subscribe to the 90-day challenge or constantly go do the practices. The actions work. You have to come along, emotionally, psychologically, and that takes effort and awareness. But, the actions are what change you. So I don't know how much time we have left. And it's time to stop sitting around waiting for something to happen. You've got to take action. You can make as many mistakes as you want along the way. You can be as imperfect as you want along the way. Nobody's going to hold you, nobody's quizzing you. But if you don't take action, nothing will change. And I'm telling you, from 61 years of life, 40 plus years of recovery and spiritual practice, I'm here to tell you that I've watched some people for decades. The people that don't take action get worse. The people that take action and seek to become self-aware, those people get better and those people evolve. And I'm telling you, because there are people I know who talk about spirituality. They've been talking about it for decades, but when it comes down to taking actions to become self-aware and to change, they don't do it, and they complain and they get mad at you for suggesting it, and they're worse off now physically and emotionally, psychologically and spiritually. They are far worse now than they were 20, 30 years ago. And everybody that I know that has taken action using programs of action that work, like the 12 steps, if you don't have that kind of addictive mind, but people who have Buddhist practices or Taoist practices or yoga, and they do that in a combination with the intention to become self-aware, those people always evolve, and their life always gets better. And the bottom line that connects all of it is action. You must take action or nothing will change. I provide you with technologies that require action, sometimes just physical actions, but I guarantee you, if you do them with the intention to shift, you will. And if you haven't found the perfect path for you, taking action on any path with the intention to change will guide you toward the path that will give you what you need. So I'm just impassioned and pleading with you. I don't know how much time we have left. And so take advantage of what I've made available to you. All right. So do the math. So that's, anyway. Let's get back. I have a list here. So perceived reality is manifested based on frequency, intention, and desire. So you can be filled with as many negative feelings. You can be filled with hate, anger, frustration, self-pity, murderous rage. You can have all those feelings. Those are just reactions. It's not about the feelings that you're having. It's about, again, what you do have control over, which is the actions that you take and your decision to become self-aware. You do that combined with your actions. Eventually your awareness will shift, and those emotions can sometimes completely shift themselves. They very often will. So perceived reality is manifested based on frequency, intention, and desire. So your intention, if you intend to see a higher reality, I'm hesitating because I'm realizing your belief has a lot to do with it. So, I've been working with people for years talking about how to help them find their soul desire. And, 10 years ago, it was about finding your perfect career based on your soul desire. And what I teach people in my book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life, which I recommend you get, again, michaelwilliamdenny.com, books, you can see at the bottom there, you can get that book. That is, if you master what's in that book, I guarantee you'll shift. But in that, when I work with people, I take them through a fantasy exercise where we just focus on their fantasies of what makes them happy. Now, once I get them to completely, totally surrender to their childlike fantasy, I then have to get them to the place of accepting that that's exactly what they're supposed to do. Now they have a belief about what they want, and that belief might be unrealistic. At least they think it is. The truth is, everybody that gets a hold of their soul desire, their soul desire is always realistic, even though they think it's not. It always is. But your belief about what you're willing to believe is possible, that has everything to do with your intention, your focus. So since we're talking about shifting up to a higher frequency of reality, in order to get to a higher frequency, we need to expand our belief about what is available. So this is why it's so important to be fantasizing about your perfect 5D and go beyond this one. Again, you know, when I was helping people find their perfect career, we were operating within the belief system of you have to have money in the bank, and you have to have a house and a car and pay taxes, and you have to have a career and blah blah. But that is a third dimensional frequency. I'm believing in a world where there are no banks, there's no need for money, there's no need for reputation. Everybody's given absolutely everything they need simply from the energy around them, from the earth. We have access to 0-point energy. There's no need to pay for gasoline, electricity, heating, air conditioning, cars. There's no need to pay for any of that anymore. So you don't need to go make, because think about how much of the money that you make goes to paying for utilities and gas and car. I mean, a lot of it. And that is all based on the belief that there isn't enough and we have to pay other people to give us that stuff. So if we live in a world where none of that is necessary, then that gets rid of it. If we get rid of the idea that we need to have money to survive, and we just do what our hunter-gatherer ancestors did, everything was given to them by Mother Nature. We go back to that time. We live in a higher technology world, but technology is not based on that. It's based on 0-point energy and consciousness. That is a fantasy world, even though I can tell you without a doubt that we have that technology now. It just hasn't been made available to you because the people who have been hoarding all of these secrets want to make sure that you don't get that, because then you won't spend money for electricity and gasoline and cars and food and everything else. So it's important to expand our belief, even if we can't see that. This is about your intention. Your intention creates a frequency which creates your reality, your ultimate reality. 5D Ascension will result from a manifestation frequency shift from solar light emission. So that's just me trying to put on a list, remind myself to say that I believe that there's going to be an experience that will be an activation experience. So I tell people not to wait around for something, because it's just not a good tactic for living. Taking a passive mindset. Being passive isn't the same as trusting. I trust that the universe is going to provide everything for me, but I also take action towards getting what I want, which is my way of saying to the universe, I'm committed to having the most perfect, beautiful, blissful possible reality I can. I'm proving that to you by taking actions and not accepting anything less than what feeds my soul. I have to live within the reality of this vibration that is manifested in front of me, but it doesn't mean that I'm stuck there. I believe and trust in something beyond that, and I take action towards it. What I am saying is that the solar flash event, I believe, will be a trigger. But what we're finding out, now that we've been in this for 9 months, we've been in this officially the solar flash event has been going on for 9 months. And what we're finding out is that the light that's coming from the sun is creating a response within us. For most people, it is an anxiety response. So the anxiety is our attachment to this current frequency, and feeling us, leaving that frequency causes anxiety, because, the fear of the unknown and the fear of dying. because we're dying to a certain frequency and awakening to a new one. It's a death. There's no two ways about that. Now, I don't know that people saw that coming. I think when people first started talking about the solar flash, and the way a lot of people talk about it, they thought, oh, it was just going to be, we'd all get hit with it and we would all feel better. Sort of like what happens, when you put heroin in your neck, or, take a hit. Actually, that's a bad example, because weed creates anxiety. But you know what I'm talking about. We just thought it would be a drug that would hit us and we would passively just all rise up. And what we're finding out is something else, which is that people are responding based on their preferred frequency. So if your preferred frequency is a learned, shame-based, fear-based, greed, all of those negative emotions, if that is our preferred response to reality that we're used to, then when we're hit with this higher dimensional light energy, then your response is to feel fear and anxiety and anger, and you act out in those ways, trying to keep that lower vibration going. And of course, you're completely clueless about it. You're just responding from instinct. So that means that the people who have been actively taking actions to shift their reality, to become self-aware, and to do the hard, painful work of spiritual awakening, spiritual enlightenment, which is, takes work, takes effort, takes focus, takes discipline. Those people have the ability to respond, and they're aware of their anxiety response, and at the same time they're able to surrender and make the shift. So this is what we're finding, that people are going in two directions, that this solar event is hitting us and it's going to force you to go into one direction or another. Nobody's going to be able to stay where they are. It's not going to happen. Nobody will ever just stay where they are. That's what a lot of people do. They just try and stay where they are, don't make any waves, just go along in the middle, and that's not working. People are either going to start, going downhill, or they're going to start awakening. Those are the only two possible responses here. So 5D Ascension will result from a manifestation frequency shift from the solar light event, or the solar flash event. There will be 3 different frequencies of post-ascension event Earth. So I don't know this for a fact. It makes sense, but this is coming from information I've received from people, as well as from higher dimensional beings who have seemed to have worked very hard to get me to understand the concept of not only frequencies but octaves, that there will be 3 octaves of Earth. Now that there might already be more than that. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I already know that there are beings, people have seen this. People have, you got to go to some place where the vibe is conducive to it. So like on Native American reservations where people still hold on to old ways and old beliefs, you'll be out in the middle of the desert. I've seen people who've done this who aren't at all into this, and they've seen these strange looking, dwarf creatures, that look like something that came out of, some fantasy movie, walking around and then walk right into the side of a mountain and disappear. Well, that's a being that's operating on, at the very least, a different frequency, if not a completely different dimension. As I already talked about, Sasquatch and other beings. So that could be beings going in and out of different octaves within the 3rd dimension. I don't know. I'm just giving you an example. I don't know. But when I asked about it once in meditation, because it was bothering me, I didn't like the idea of not everybody shifting up. It really bothered me. It reminded me of the Christian, when Jesus comes again, whatever they call that. Sometimes I can't remember words when I'm doing videos because my brain's going so fast, but the rapture, I remember that from when I was at Christianity, that only, though the good people who believed in the right religion are going to go and everybody else is going to get stuck here. I didn't like that. But if we look at it from a different perspective, that your perceived, that your chosen frequency will determine which octave you're in, that makes sense. And since it's clear from what's happening with the people's response, people's knee-jerk response to either cling and attach more to the negative 3D or to let go and evolve, that those are really the only two responses. Based on that, it makes sense that people, if they end up in some lesser frequency, it is their choice. It's their choice because that's what's comfortable to them. That's what they want. And when I came to realize that it would be counterproductive to just shift everybody up whether they wanted it or not, when I realized that there are people that aren't done, with their third dimensional negative experiments, their karma, that the kindest thing we can do is allow them to shift to a frequency that they want to be at. I've had to let go of people I really cared about because they've chosen that, and to be with them, any longer. There was a group of people that I was meeting with on a regular basis, and I made the decision to stop because I realized that it was destructive to my frequency to keep staying with these people who were so focused on, self-pity and unwilling to learn and grow and become self-aware and take action to heal. And those people won't shift up. And I've had to let them go. There's one person in particular, maybe things will change for this person, but light beings appeared to them and they said, no, thank you. That's a very, light beings are in a higher vibrational perspective, and to say no to them is saying no to a dimensional frequency shift. So that's why, my main focus is to guide people onto these interdimensional meditations. And I keep telling you to open yourself to the interaction with them and the communication, because saying yes to that is a guarantee that you'll shift up. But you must consciously choose it. Otherwise, it won't. Then your knee-jerk reaction will to shift down. So there will be 3 different frequencies of post-ascension event Earth, and that makes sense. Again, I haven't seen this. I only know what I've been told. But it makes sense because, as I said, people will have the autonomy to shift wherever they want. And even though there are some people who will be absolutely miserable in the lowest octave of this, and they're going to be living in the worst 1984 slave planet scenario, that's what they want. That's their most, they don't consciously feel like they want that, but they obviously do. And they have some 3D experiment left for them. They still have some residual karma that they're holding on to. And they the thing about it is that the way karma works is that when you're beat up bad enough and it's so painful that you can't tolerate it anymore, then you let it go. People who have had near-death experiences, the vast majority of them always have a pleasant experience, but there is a small percentage of people that go to what they perceive to be hell. And in all of those experiences, I think, that I've looked at, that I believe the person's, I don't think they're making it up, they will say that at some point they reach out to what they perceive to be God, and they're immediately taken out of it. So, but things had to get so bad that they were willing to let it go. This is when it comes to people who, in 12-step programs who are recovering from addiction, they talk about hitting bottom, and people won't work the steps, and people won't get sober, get clean, until things have gotten so bad that they have to do something. So people only shift up unless they have to. And the truth of the matter is, not everybody is in a position where it's painful enough where they have to shift up. Because when it gets so painful that you can no longer do it, only then are you willing to shift up. So that's part of the frustrating thing about being a teacher. There's a lot of people who've stopped working with me because at some point they're just unwilling to take the actions and follow directions. And when they get to that, I say, I can't help you anymore. Come back to me after you've done X, Y, and Z, and then we can keep going. But until then, we're just spinning our wheels and I'm wasting your time and I can't help you. And the kindest thing I can do is leave them in that experience of, at least they have the awareness that they're not happy and they want to do something to shift. But so that's why I now believe in the 3 octaves, because it makes the most sense. It is my hope that I get to the highest octave based on all of my experiences. The evidence seems to indicate that I will, but I'm not going to take that for granted. I'm going to keep pushing and keep working and keep expanding to the best of my ability. And it's not easy, but I'm willing to do that. And anyway, of course, time will tell. Your earth manifestation will result from your frequency choice. I already talked about that. Everything is based on conscious choice. This is really important. Again, talking about that group of people that I worked with for decades, I would bring up my experience, which I said everything is a choice. And a lot of people really had a problem with that, including the teacher of that. That person would say, not everything is a choice, not everybody has the ability to choose. And I said, that's just not my experience. Everything is a choice. Not that we have the choice to control everything. Like, I can't take control of my emotions a lot of times. I can't control them. So I can't say that, you're only in a bad mood because you choose to be. Sometimes it's just, you only have so much ability to choose how you're feeling. How I choose to operate in that state is my choice. The attitude that I choose to accept is my choice. My choice to be willing to do whatever it takes is a choice. My choice to be willing to take whatever action is necessary is my choice. Sometimes my attitude is my choice. There are things I find myself almost on a daily basis, my head will try and get me into a bad mood about something. There's no waves today. I would have loved to have gone surfing, but there's no waves. I could easily start talking myself into a bad mood by going, when I was in Australia, the waves were so much better, and I hate it here. I could easily do that. And then I go, you know what, Mike, you don't have to be upset about this. Here are all the things that are awesome about where you live. And there's plenty of good waves here. In fact, this is probably a better place for you to be at this stage in your age bracket, because the waves here are much more user-friendly. And some of the, sometimes there's really good waves. And yeah, you might have to wait a little bit longer than you did when you lived in Australia. But, blah, blah, blah. I can choose to be really happy and find wonderful things. Yesterday I was in absolute bliss when I was in the midst of Tiamat's energy, and I was so happy to be living in this amazing rainforest. In the continental United States, there's a public supermarket down the street, but right over there's a trail that goes into this unbelievable rainforest with palm trees, and wow. So it's, I might not be feeling great, but I can make the decision to choose to do what I can to feel better. And eventually your choices end up determining everything. So choice is everything, and you have control over that. So everything is based on conscious choice. You may not be able to control your immediate feelings, but you can control your choices. Manifestation occurs after visualizing your desired manifested reality. So, this is one way that you can go contrary to your immediate feelings. You visualize the impossible, but what you really want. It works. I can't explain how or why, but I can tell you that it works. And the choice to trust, that is a choice. It doesn't mean you're not afraid. It doesn't mean that your perception is telling you that you're going to be poor and miserable forever. It doesn't mean that those perceptions and feelings go away. And it's not denial. because you're taking actions towards it. Denial says, no, everything is going to be fine. I've worked with people who have used that, who say, have decided to stop working with me because, I was telling them, you have to take these actions. You've got to at least, take some actions to get a different place to live, or change your work scenario, or change your health scenario, or something like that. And, there have been cases where they got to that point and they just said, you know what, somebody else just said I should just believe and know that everything's going to work out. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you got to have actions to back that up. That is your insurance policy, right? People spend money. Like, there are people in California, in where I lived, like the near the neighborhood I grew up in, there's these big landslides, and $1 million homes are being destroyed, and they've been paying insurance. Who knows how many tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance they've spent on their homes, and insurance won't pay for them. Their house is a complete loss. They still have to pay taxes on the land. They still have to pay. Mortgage on the house that they've got themselves in hock for, and insurance won't give them a penny. Well, there is an insurance policy that works, and the insurance policy is actions. So you choose to believe the best. Your circumstances don't show you that, but you choose to believe the best. In this case, I'm choosing to believe that I'm going to be living in my 5D world, sitting on my crystal throne, in beautiful 5D Australia, subtropical forest with, all of that. That I'm choosing to believe that. I don't see any evidence for that right now. I'm in Florida in 3D, and I'm never getting on a plane again for the rest of my life. So it's going to be difficult under the current circumstances for me to have what I want. But I'm choosing to believe, and I am taking actions. Every time I do interdimensional meditation, every time I come on here and teach you guys what I know, every time that I do my spirit fighting practices, every time I meditate, I am taking direct actions. And actions are your insurance policy. And your insurance policy will pay whenever you run into issues. So, you may not see the hope of what's coming for you financially, physically, personally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. But the actions that you take that are based on your hope, that is an insurance policy that will pay out. I can tell you that from experience. Taking actions. The vast majority of programs that I put into this channel to make money, 95% of them don't go anywhere. The 5% that people actually pay to, subscribe to the channel, or pay on the shop, or, pay to work with me, that's like 5%. 95% of the stuff I've created has gone nowhere. But I've continued to take action and continued to make teachings available, so that I can live without having to go work some job I can't stand. And it's the actions or the insurance policy. So continue to take actions regardless of what you see, regardless of what you feel. But the actions have to be focused on your soul desire, your joy. Taking actions on stuff you don't want is a waste of time. It's a bad bet. You won't get any return on that. All right. Working with light beings greatly expands your ability to imagine higher frequencies. So this is easily the most powerful thing that I can offer, which is why we do the live guided meditations, right? We do these every Wednesday and Saturday. That's why I do that for free for anybody and everybody, because if you can tap in and communicate with a higher dimensional being and make a connection, that is by far the most powerful way to shift you out. There isn't anybody that I've worked with who's encountered light beings who hasn't shifted. I mean, that'll shift you, and everything will change if you do that. It's the most important thing you can do. I wouldn't just stop just with that, because they are the ones that, by the way, have created all of the Mao Shan. All of the Mao Shan practices were given to humans by higher dimensional light beings, extraterrestrial light beings. In fact, this guy is a master of the Mao Shan spirit fighting. That's where we learned it from. It's from that wonderful species. They gave it to humans through the Mao Shan practices. Through the Mao Shan meditators received these forms from them. They didn't know it, but I know it. So, the most powerful actions, and again, what's important is your belief. Your reality will be created based on your ability to envision and believe. So, working with light beings, they will exponentially increase your ability to imagine, in all different directions. So that's the most important thing, is to see, where am I? Working with light beings greatly expands your ability to imagine higher frequencies. All right, so again, what are the things we've already talked about that you can do? Research scientific 3D simulation evidence theory, Donald Hoffman on YouTube. Become aware of your instinctual attachment to the 3D narrative. Make a committed, disciplined decision to choose to exit the simulation. Practice the 12 steps to 5D, which you can find on this YouTube channel. Do interdimensional meditation as often as possible. Continue to visualize your fantasy 5D Earth. Do the Mao Shan practices and meditations daily. I know now, without a doubt, those are the most powerful higher dimensional practices in the history of human beings on planet Earth. I'm willing to be wrong about that, but you'd have to find something more powerful, and so far nobody's even come close, and I haven't. What else can you do? So 6D energy practice routine. This is for beginners and or just basically anybody. Do the lightning qigong routine daily, which you can find here at thunderwizard.com, the 90-day challenge. That's the lightning qigong. Do that routine daily, and then not every day necessarily, but maybe 3 to 7 days per week, do the 5-element breaths and postures. Again, that can be found here at thunderwizard.com. Subscribe to the 90-day challenge. The 5-element postures and breath, those are there. Do those on a daily basis. Those will balance and shift you. That is, the 5 elements are transformative. They will transform you. 5-element breaths and postures. Awakening Immortals Qigong. That can be found at the shop at thunderwizard.com. Very inexpensive. Everybody can afford that. Do the 3 Ones meditation and the Mao Shan mantra. That can be found here at thunderwizard.com again. That meditation was used 2,000 years ago, and people who practiced that and spent their whole lives focused on that meditation, they shifted out of this reality. So you can't do better than that. You can find that here at the 90-day challenge. And the interdimensional meditation, free for everybody, recorded or self-guided. Visualization of your fantasy 5D Earth. And then after all of that, ground with the Hool breath meditation. So again, what I'm saying is 7 days a week, do the lightning qigong routine, and then up to you, do between 3 and 7 days per week. Do this 5-element breath postures, followed by awakening immortals, followed by 3 Ones meditation, followed by interdimensional meditation, visualization of your fantasy 5D Earth, and then end the practice by grounding with the Hool breath meditation. Do you have to do all of that? No. If you really want a good practice, I put that together specifically for people who aren't doing the spirit fighting but have access to the other things. Is it okay if you take 2 or 3 of those things out? Yes. Is it okay if I only do 1 of those things? Yes. Do something. That's just, that right there is a suggested routine for somebody who really wants to put their effort into something. So do that. And again, almost all of those things can be found here at the thunderwizard.com website. Okay, advanced practice. This is if you're really, really serious about hardcore shifting out of this body as fast as possible. That's kind of my mindset right now. So do the lightning qigong routine daily, then again 3 to 7 days per week do the 5-element Maoshan spirit fighting forms, which can be found at the shop here at thunderwizard.com. Then after the 5-element spirit fighting forms, do the 3 ones meditation plus the Maoshan mantra, then followed by interdimensional meditation, followed by visualization of your fantasy 5D earth, and then close with the Heaven Earth Qigong meditation, which can be found at the thunderwizard.com 90-day challenge. All right, so that is a more advanced one. Again, do you have to do all of those? No, you can pick 3, 4, 1 or 2. But if I was going back in time to myself 30 years ago, because I really wanted to, I wanted to shift. I was trying to shift to the other dimension. I didn't realize that all that practice would pay off, this far down the road. But if I were to go back in time and give myself exactly what I know I was looking for, it would have been this one. I would have done the lightning qigong routine in the morning, and then at least 3 days, if not maybe every day, I would do the spirit fighting forms, plus the 3 ones meditation, the Maoshan mantra, the interdimensional meditation to connect with light beings. I would visualize my fantasy 5D earth, and then I would ground with the Heaven Earth Qigong meditation. The Heaven Earth Qigong meditation is one of those practices that if people just, the average person said, I just want one practice that will do everything, I would say Heaven Earth Qigong meditation. You can find that here, 90-day challenge at thunderwizard.com. So there we go. As I said, you can watch what I uploaded to my Rumble channel. I made a very important video. But again, listen to the warning at the beginning and make sure that you know what you're doing when you watch the whole thing. But for those that are able to watch it, it will give you an idea of what it is that we are seeking to transcend and why it's so important, and why the world is shifting, why the solar flash is coming. It's not coming just for no reason. It's because things have to change. All right, so that's it, my friends. I appreciate you being here. And final note is, you don't have to watch what I put up on Rumble. What is most important is that you focus on this understanding of frequency shifting. Make that the most important thing that you think about, and then be willing to take the actions to make that shift. And always be asking your light being guides, what can I do? Tell me what I need to know. How can I take more proactive control over my frequency shift? They are the ones that can help you the most. That's it, my friends. I love you all so much. Please remember, you're the most powerful being that has ever existed. The entire universe was created solely for your personal enjoyment and pleasure. And just know that you focusing on what gives you the greatest joy is what brings awakening and enlightenment to all conscious beings, including the most powerful deities. When you work on making your soul happy, Shiva, Kali, Zeus, Thor, they all get on their knees and they bow to you, because you making yourself happy brings them greater awareness. So make your happiness the most important thing. That's all. I love you all. Please be good to yourselves. I'll see you all very soon.